Hey everybody, it's been a minute or two since you've seen our faces, but my name is Matt Aguilar and here with my partner George Willis. George, it's been a little bit. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you too. Yes, it has. Been doing a little traveling and moving and all of that good stuff and going to weddings, but all is well. Excited to be back on and talk a little bit about some boxing.
All right, let's talk some boxing. Before we get to what we want to talk about, which is the Hall of Fame, the ballots are out. They're due at the end of the month for members of the Boxing Writers Association, and so that's what we want to get to. But first, I think we want to pay homage to a couple of fallen fighters. First off, a guy, George, both you and I covered a little bit, attended fights of, and watched with a lot of excitement. Ricky Hatton passed away a few weeks ago, and the huge wedding in England. And what were your thoughts on Ricky?
Well, I had the privilege of covering his fight against Floyd Mayweather in Vegas, and that was just a huge event. I think half of England came over for that fight, if judging by how many Brits were at the hotel in Vegas, and they sang and sang and sang and sang every day leading up to the fight. The song they kept chanting, "There's only one Ricky Hatton," and sang it over and over and over again until you got a little sick of it, actually. And there was a lot of intrigue going into the fight. Back at that time, that's when the buildup was. They called it the 24/7, I guess.
Yes.
It was a HBO fight, right? No, it was a Showtime fight if he was fighting Floyd, right? So, or was that on HBO? I can't even remember.
24/7 was
But anyway, it
HBO.
was
Yeah, I think it was HBO actually. Yeah, it was.
the HBO fight. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, it was
remember.
before
I remember laughing.
before Floyd went to Showtime. Yeah. And so you had the big buildup with the 24/7 and all the back and forth and everything that was going on. And it built up to be a very big fight. And the Brits were solidly behind their man. But, Floyd, of course, was a better fighter, wound up knocking him out in the 10th round. And interesting enough, that's one of the few fights that I actually bet on. I wasn't a big bettor. It still aren't when I go to Vegas betting on fights, actually going to the sports book and laying down a bet. But I actually did this particular time. And the only bet I put down was Floyd knocking him out in the 10th round. So
Oh,
I
wow.
cashed a little bit of a check that night. So,
You had some. You had
but
some.
a great fight. Yeah, tenacious fight. And then his fight with Pacquiao, he was obviously overmatched. But just a terrific personality for boxing. He was a rugged fighter. He fought with his heart, and he had a huge following, as evidenced by, how many people have acknowledged his passing. So, I always think well of Ricky Hatton. He was a true boxer and a good supporter of the fight game. And unfortunately, obviously, had some mental problems that he was going through, which is always very difficult.
Yeah, I remember the first time. I guess I saw him a little bit before he beat Kostya Tszyu for the title, and what turned out to be his kind of signature fight. He just mauled and brawled Tszyu to death that night, and the crowd was going crazy, and a star was born. You just when you see a performance like that, I mean, I think he won every round, and it's not like Kostya Tszyu was any slouch. Even at that time, he was a little older, but he could still do some things. He wasn't that far removed from the knockout of Zab Judah a few years, but he still had pop, and he still had some ability. He was still a title holder, but Hatton just pressured him, and just basically made him quit. And and you see a performance like that, and that was a superstar making performance. You're thinking this guy's going to be around for a little bit, and he was. I think the high point monetarily anyway for his career was the Mayweather fight, and he that was huge buildup, and a great fight. You could hear the crowd coming from the TV screen. It was just so loud, and it seemed like one of the funnest. I think someone described it as one of the funnest atmospheres I've ever been in. At a fight. I covered his fight with Pacquiao, and of course, everybody expected, not that, right? I mean, I'm thinking. I don't think anybody expected that outcome, but it was still. I mean, the party that his fans brought to Vegas, was so much fun, and the fact that their guy got knocked out in the second round by one of the most vicious punches of the century, really, it didn't dampen their spirit one bit. They were
absolutely right.
They were back in the bars right afterwards, and they were like, "Oh well,"
They sure were. It was, right. It was awesome. Most Americans, their man loses, they go home, they want no part of anything. But like you said, they went right back to the bar. They kept singing their song again. There's only one Ricky Hatton, and they just kept going and going and going. It was awesome. It was really awesome.
And we met some guys, obviously a bunch of them, but a few in particular that we kind of partied with through the night. And he said, "Oh well, Pacquiao, bloody good show, mate."
Right. And they really thought they were going to beat Floyd too. I mean, even with all the buildup, I think they got enamored with their own press clippings and what they saw on television. And because I remember his trainer at the time, not really his trainer, but the second guy, and he was at the bar drinking with Bert Sugar or somebody at the time, going, Ricky's going to destroy Mayweather. Just not win, but he was going to destroy Mayweather. And of course that didn't happen. So anyway, it was a great fight.
Yeah, it was a great fight. And also too, I mean,
great event.
It was a great event because why? Because they made that event at the right time, right? There was no marinating. There was no, he was coming off a big win over Jose Luis Castillo. Hatton was, and he called Floyd out right after that fight and said, something like, "I provided more excitement in 4 rounds than Mayweather has in 4 years," and it was on.
Right.
It was on. Floyd heard that and he was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
And they made the fight.
And Floyd knew he could make some money off of him too. That he was a legitimate contender, and he would bring a bunch of fans, and it would be good TV and a good show and a good build-up.
And it absolutely was.
Perfect opponent, yeah.
R.I.P. Ricky Hatton. He was, as you say, not just a fighter who at one time was one of the best in the game, but also just a gentleman and
right. Absolutely. Yeah, I was really concerned when I heard he was considering a comeback fight. That just didn't sound right, because one thing about Ricky is he used to blow up between fights.
Yep.
He would fight maybe at welterweight or junior welterweight or whatever, but he would seriously put on the pounds in between fights, and so he had to lose all that and recondition himself, and get ready for another big fight. And it wears on your body a lot when you have to consistently lose a lot of weight in between fights.
Ricky Fatten. Right? Yeah. That's what he used to call himself, Ricky Fatten.
Right.
Remember he used to put on that big suit?
Right.
Yeah. So he made fun of himself, that he was well known for blowing up between fights. And I think at the end of the day, I'm sure it didn't do his career any favors.
Right.
And although I do remember seeing I think it was his last ever fight. He had been away a few years. And he ended up losing by like 10th round knockout, I think. I can't remember who it was to, but I remember he looked pretty good. Like he ended up losing, but I think he was fighting well up until that point. So I kind of thought, well, maybe he'll continue his career here, but no, he didn't. And that was it. But even at the end, he was fighting pretty well, I thought.
Right.
So, but no one wanted to see him come back now. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
that was more than 10 years ago, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so, in more sad news in boxing, and the son of Arturo Gatti Jr. Was found dead recently in Mexico, and you wrote a very good column on our old Scribes site about meeting him several years ago.
Yeah, it happened at the his father's induction at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and I went up there to cover the induction and everyone else who was getting inducted that year. And obviously, there was a lot of tension between a lot of Arturo Gatti's family and fans about the circumstances surrounding his death. They were still, real raw at the time, and a lot of accusations going back and forth. And Arturo Jr. was obviously with his mother at the time, who had been briefly jailed uh, in the aftermath of Arturo's death, but then was released. So I remember at the induction they brought up his daughter, and she said, "Thank you for honoring my daddy," or something like that. She was held up, and the crowd applauded. But there was no Arturo Jr. at the time. Nobody really actually knew he was there. And I usually go to the McDonald's across the street to file my story. So I go to the McDonald's across the street after the induction ceremony and all of that had taken place. And I hear this, and I get my seat at a table, get my computer out, ordered my Big Mac or whatever I was going to eat. And then I hear this lady at the counter going, Arturo, Arturo, come here, Arturo. And I kind of look up because, of course, Arturo, you're going to. And I noticed this little boy neatly dressed in a black suit, and he was 4 years old. And I kind of walked up to the woman and basically confirmed that it was Arturo Gatti Jr. and that he indeed was at the induction ceremony, but he was at the back of the crowd. He wasn't acknowledged. No one supposedly knew he was there. And so they were getting ready to go back to Canada. And so I talked to him for a bit and obviously did a story and got a small quote from him. And, I'd always wondered exactly what happened to him and what became of him. And understood that he was pursuing boxing and something like that. But it was just shocking news about what happened to him at 17 years old, very young and dying under similar circumstances to his father, which was really, really tragic.
Yeah, did I hear recently that they may be doing some questioning of his mother in that, or somebody? I don't remember the details, but it seems very similar to what happened with his father in terms of some of the questions that are coming about.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what they're going to do now? But I think the ship has sailed as far as any accusations toward her about what happened to Arturo Gatti Sr.
Yeah.
What they're investigating in this latest case and her son, I really don't know. It would be unbelievable if somehow she was involved in that. But I'm sure there were a lot that Arturo Jr. had to deal with, being the son of Arturo Gatti Sr. I'm sure boxing was probably the last thing she wanted him to get into.
Yeah.
But he did. And, being the tough business that it is. And, but you thought maybe he might make something of himself. You saw him training with Tyson on social media and other boxers that were sort of helping him along the way. So you thought maybe this is a good fit for him. Then all of a sudden you hear this news, and it was just shocking.
Yeah, he would have been a ticket seller, that's for sure. I mean, his dad was so exciting that even the name, Arturo Gatti Jr. just on a billboard would draw some fans just on that. So
Right.
yeah, that's really it's very unfortunate, that something like this would happen not only to Arturo but his son, and so young, 17 years old. That's just
right, absolutely.
so yeah. R.I.P. Arturo Jr. He's with his dad, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
On to more, business news. We have Hall of Fame voting coming up, and a lot of names on there. A lot of discussion about specific fighters. Um, Typically, a guy with three initials, Triple G.
Right.
Um, but he's kind of the star of this year's Hall of Fame ballot, just because he's the most recent. People know him. He was a superstar for a long time.
Right.
The discussion is, does Triple G belong in the Hall of Fame? I have my answer. What do you think?
Well, I think there's no question he belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think he carried the sport for a couple of years when the sport needed him to carry the sport and be a shining star and a person of interest that people galvanized to and wanted to watch fight. And he wasn't shy about whoever he fought. He wasn't particular about who he fought. He fought whoever they put in front of him. And he's a no-brainer. And before we go down the list, this is something that the writers of the Boxing Writers Association get the privilege of doing. It's sent out by the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And there's about 20, there's about 20, 25, 30 people on the list that
Right.
you have to go through their careers. And I think everybody takes it pretty seriously. Fighters have invested a lot, and it's a very, very serious thing to them. So it should be a very, very serious thing to us. And it's not something that I take lightly, and I'm sure you don't take it lightly. So I spend time, I go back, I research, and I have my own set of criteria that I look at. And one's longevity. The other is how many titles did they win? How long did they hold the titles? And how many times did they defend those titles? And who were the major fighters that they fought against? And did they win or lose those fights? So that's some of the criteria I look at. What do you look for when you decide to vote?
Very similar. Very similar. Like you said, longevity. Number of title defenses. Number of titles. And the names that they've won or lost to. I think something that I do take into account, that I think is big and probably applies here, is impact, right? What kind of impact does this fighter have on the sport? It doesn't have to be, that's kind of a broad term. It doesn't have to be impact on, on the casual fan or anything, but impact on the sport, impact on his division, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much my criteria too. I like you, I take some time doing this. I'm just now wrapping up. A lot of good names, a lot of deserving names, but you only have 5. So I don't know if you do you have yours. Well, let me finish talking about Triple G, because he is on my list as well. He was a no-brainer, first ballot. He was an easy one. I mean, anybody that starts off 18-0 with 18 knockouts in title fights, I mean, in middleweight title fights. I mean, this is not, this is a glamour division. You're talking one of the greatest divisions in boxing history, and Triple G started off in title fights 18-0 with 18 knockouts. It wasn't until his draw with Canelo that he didn't score a knockout, and we all know he won that one.
Right.
And so, he made, and also too, it's, he was an avoided fighter. That knockout percentage was no joke. I mean, people did not want to fight him, and that included Canelo. This fight could have been made several years earlier. Canelo won the middleweight title in 2015, from Miguel Cotto, and he could have fought him right then and there. He didn't fight him for another 2 years, and a fighter of Golovkin's, age. I mean, boxing, 2 years is a long time. But still, I think he won it. He's often criticized for, not beating this guy, not beating that guy. But you know what? He fought and he beat the people that were put in front of him. And, there was, much like Marvin Hagler's reign before he fought the big names, only because they moved up in weight, right? But, he fought Gabriel Rosado. He fought Matthew Macklin. Curtis Stevens was a good fighter. Daniel Gill. Martin Murray was a very good fighter. David Lemieux, that was a pay-per-view fight. Triple G handled him like nobody's business. Knocked out Kell Brook. He stepped up in weight. That was no contest.
Right.
Daniel Jacobs. I mean, these are all names. They may not be Hall of Fame names, but they are names that were solid middleweights during his era. And, some of the bigger names of the time were just not in a hurry to fight him. So, yeah, for me,
no question.
He was easily he was a shoo-in for me. Definitely. And both of us, we've both covered Bernard Hopkins live. I watched Marvin Hagler, endless amounts of rounds of Marvin Hagler. Carlos Monzon. Triple G fits comfortably in with any middleweight in history, in my opinion.
I would agree. And then no question he gets my vote as well for the Hall of Fame, of course, and probably everybody else's vote as well. I'd be shocked if somebody left him off their ballot.
Yep.
So I'm gonna give you my next one.
Okay.
And see what you think. Jorge Arce. Now, hear me out. I go with him because longevity. He fought from 96 to 14. He had titles in 4 weight divisions. Only the second to do that, other than Eric Morales. And he was a showman. I really liked his showmanship. You talk about impact. I like to see. When I looked down that list that we had, to me, he stood out. And for longevity, the showmanship he brought to the sport, and the way he fought, and upholding the tradition of the Mexican fighter, he got my vote this year.
That's a good one. He rode in on a horse too, right?
Yeah. You never knew what to expect. He was always going to make this grand entrance somehow, and he had the lollipop and all that stuff.
Yes.
So he was somebody. When I saw his name, it jumped off the page for me.
Got it. My next one would be Nigel Benn. He, definitely one of the top, most popular British and most accomplished British fighters that ever lived. Had an epic 2-fight series with Chris Eubank that is so epic that 35 years later, their kids are headlining pay-per-view shows. That's how big that rivalry is or was. He's also got wins over Iran Barkley, Gerald McClellan in that ill-fated fight, but it was also the 1995 Fight of the Year. And Ben had to climb back into the ring in the first round after a vicious assault by McClellan to come back and win by 10th round knockout. So to me, I was also debating between he and Chris Eubank, but I think Ben beats him out. I think Ben beats him out just because he's got that signature win over McClellan that everybody knows. So that would be my number 2 pick.
Can't argue against that. They're all quality fighters, and then he was absolutely a quality fighter and Hall of Fame worthy, no question about it. The other one I put on my list is Chris John, and he is someone I voted for in the past. hasn't quite made it to the podium yet, but maybe I'm hoping he might make it this year. Outstanding boxing record, 48 wins, 22 knockouts, 1 loss, multiple division champion, and fought for a very, very long time. Held titles, a title. He was a title holder from 2004 to 2004 to 2013.
Yeah.
That's a long time to hold a title, and made 16 title defenses. So he's just somebody I've always voted for and rooting for to make it this time. So Chris Jones gets my vote.
He also handed Juan Manuel Marquez his a huge loss back in right after Marquez had drawn with Pacquiao, and everybody kind of waiting for the Pacquiao Marquez 2 fight, but John derailed it by boxing his ears off over in Indonesia, I believe. And so, yeah, he was a very, very talented and angular boxer who frustrated fighters, much like he did our Marquez on that night.
Is he on your list?
He's not on my list. My third guy on my list. So far I have Triple G and Nigel Benn. And also I wanted, before I moved on, we were talking about Arce. He had a great career that didn't start out great, because in his first major fight, he got stopped by Eric Morales in what turned out to be Morales' final fight. He was a young kid. He was ahead on all the scorecards, and Morales kind of miraculously came back. But I always admired Arce because he didn't let that derail him a bit. He went on to, here he is on the Hall of Fame ballot. So, yeah, congratulations for making that. My third pick would be Darius Michaelshevsky. He is the former longtime light heavyweight champion who made 24 defenses of his title,
outstanding,
including wins over Graciano Raggiani, Montel Griffin. And to me, this is the thing that put him over the edge, because I remember this fight very distinctly. He beat Virgil Hill in a light heavyweight unification fight. And didn't just beat him. I mean, he beat him convincingly at a time when Hill was on a streak of his own. It was a very big light heavyweight unification fight. And he also is the guy that Roy Jones didn't really want to fight. He a quick story here. One of my buddies who works here at the Associated Press here in Chicago, I used to work with him at the El Paso Times, and then he had just moved to Portland. Well, it just so happened that Portland was hosting the Roy Jones-Clinton Woods fight. And so my buddy called me up and said, "Hey, I'm about to cover this fight. What do you know about what I should ask him after the fight?" So I said, "Ask him about Darius Michaelshevsky." So he didn't know what he was walking into there. And I guess he asked him about Michaelshevsky, and Roy Jones went on like a 20-minute tirade about why he wasn't avoiding Michaelshevsky. Too bad. So, but yeah, he was a very, very tough pressure fighter, nicknamed the Tiger. And anytime you start putting like that together, that's going to catch your eye. So yeah, Darius Michaelshevsky is my third pick.
Good for you. All right, the other pick I have on my list is Gennaro Hernandez. He's someone I voted for in the past as well. I hope he gets a little more consideration this year, and maybe is honored by an induction. Of course, he passed away of serious illness, right? He had cancer,
Yes, a rare form of cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, rare form of cancer that took his life. But a pretty decent career. Made a name for himself, and I'm just hoping he gets in. Uh, he had a decent career and won a lot of big fights early. Lost to Mayweather Jr. was his last fight, and I think Mayweather wound up paying for his funeral. You look at his record and his only major losses. Lost to De La Hoya as well, but he was a warrior and he fought a long, long time. And I just gave my vote. I hope he gets in.
Yeah, I did a story last year on Hinaro, and I talked to his brother Rudy, who we all know is a world class trainer of Nakatani, and a quote that stood out from Rudy about that is I asked him, what would this mean to you if Hinaro would get in, and he said it wouldn't mean anything. He's not going to bring it back. It's just not. He said, I wish that this had happened when he was alive, but right now it doesn't mean anything. So that's.
Well, I think it would. Yeah, you hear people say that, but when it happens, it's kind of a different.
Yeah, for sure.
You hear athletes say, I don't even care. Harry Carson said he didn't care about being inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When it got to the point, it was year after year after year.
Right.
But then when he's finally inducted, he really, really appreciated. So, I hope he gets in and his family can enjoy his induction. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. And his only two losses were to De La Hoya and Mayweather. So that's
right.
And he's got some big wins. He beat Azua Nelson. He made like 8 or 9 defenses of his junior lightweight title. Then he won a lightweight title. Yeah, he's definitely someone that it would be nice to get in for him to get in. My fourth pick is a guy that competed in the early 90s, and I heard his name a lot. And then you start doing research on him, you realize how good he was. Pongsak Wongjongkam. He defended his. How was that pronunciation, George? Is that good?
It's a lot closer than I would have gotten, that's for sure.
He defended the flyweight title 17 times between 2001 and 2007, which is a record. He defeated 21 opponents in title fights. That's getting into the Triple G dominance area. And ultimately was 22-2-2 in world title fights. Holds the record for the fastest knockout in flyweight history, 34 seconds. And beat the big names of the era, including Hussein and Hilumamba Honda. So I do remember him in the early 90s. Back then when we watched boxing, a lot of it was on network television, HBO time. Unfortunately, Wongjongkam was never on, any of those broadcasts, but it's too bad because he was somebody that the American audience really would have enjoyed. I think he was a very talented fighter. So, and he's been someone who's been on the ballot for a while, and a lot of people would like to see him into. That's my fourth pick.
Okay. My fifth and last pick is Vernon Forrest. I kind of think long and hard every time I look at Vernon come up, and you wonder if he fought long enough. But I think he made, one thing you mentioned was impact. And his impact was short, but it sort of captivated boxing. He became a big name almost overnight, once he defeated Sugar Shane. And there were a couple of years where he was at the top of the food chain, and he changed the sport as well as far as the business end of it, because he was a fighter who took control of his career. and I think the impact of that was very substantial. So, and it's almost, my vote is almost based on what could have been, uh, almost as much as what was. I don't know if that's quite fair, but it's hard to get around that fact that he would have been, very Hall of Fame worthy, and someone who would have had and did have a tremendous impact on the sport while he was alive.
Yeah, I think you would have to go back to 2002 to really understand just how big his win over Shane Mosley was, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Shane Mosley was the pound for pound best fighter in boxing, no doubt. He was he was
Mhm.
he was a force to be reckoned with. And going into this fight, this was expected to be just another title defense for Sugar Shane. Um,
Mhm.
and instead, we got really one of the best performances of the decade there. He dominated
Mhm.
Mosley, dropped
Right.
it, and just gave just a perfect performance on how to fight from a distance and beat a guy
Mhm.
who was considered great coming in, but showing that when you use boxing skills and the gifts that you have, which is length and speed, and he showed he could be dominant, and he was. And I remember afterwards he said something like, young boxers, if you want to learn how to be good, just learn how to use your jab. And that's exactly what he
Mhm.
did to beat Mosley that night. Used his
Right.
jab, and it was just a great performance. And then he came back and he beat him again. Um, you know, and the rematch.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, Vernon Forrest uh, was definitely a force to be reckoned with early in the decade, and somebody who is a very good pick.
Mhm.
Um, and so my final one is Viva Argentina, Santos Laciar. He is a two-time 115-pound champ. The first time he held the WBA title, he made one defense, I believe, but it was the second time he was dominant. He reigned for 3 years, uh, and several defenses. I can't remember how many defenses, but he like 8 or 9 defenses. Defended all over the world, including Venezuela, Copenhagen, Japan, South Korea. Was always on the road. Beat some of the bigger names of the era, including Betulio Gonzalez, Juan Herrera, Prudencio Cardona, Hilario Zapata, and Gilberto Roman. All those names were very, very big names in the flyweight division back in his era in the early in the 1980s. So yeah, it was uh, for me. It came down to Laciar and Gilberto Roman, who was also a top flyweight at the time, but Laciar
Mhm.
beat Roman, so that's kind of what it came down to for me. Um,
Excellent choice.
yeah. So
Of course, there were some names that we neither one of us chose that
yeah,
fight fans are probably a little more familiar with, like Sean Porter is one, Antonio Tarver, Israel Vasquez. These are some Fernando Vargas. These are some fighters that people know. Do you think they'll ever get to the point where they get enough votes to get in?
of the names that you chose, I would guess that, uh, or that you just mentioned, I would guess that Israel Vasquez is somebody that um, would probably, has a shot. Um,
Right.
in my mind.
Hmm.
Just his fights with Marquez alone were, uh, they're epic. We want to talk about impact. Those fights had tremendous
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
impact on the sport, and I would say that is definitely a name that would be considered, uh, you know,
Hmm.
in the future.
But you look at some of these names on the list, like Sean Porter, Antonio Tarver. You look at their careers and you feel like, okay, they had some flash in it, but were they sustainable Hall of Fame careers? Sean, rugged fighter, was in some big fights, won a welterweight title, but he lost some of the biggest fights he was in. So I think it may be a little difficult for him to break through. It might be just who else is on the list at that particular time. Probably same thing with Tarver, whose biggest wins, of course, was against Roy Jones. But is that enough? Beating Rocky Balboa, I don't know if that really counts.
That's the thing with Tarver, is that we all know how great he was in his prime. He was great enough to knock out Roy Jones. I mean, that's definitely under the impact category for me.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, like you say, consistency, longevity, and number of titles, he also was upset by Glenn Johnson, a fighter that was plucky and good in his own right, but really he should have never beaten an Antonio Tarver, right? I mean, when it comes down to like talent, but Johnson had so much determination that overcame Tarver's talent, and I think at the end of the day, that's what hurts Tarver's Hall of Fame quest.
Right.
Any other names on there? I didn't bring the list down here with me, unfortunately. But what?
Yeah, I mean, those are the big names. Meldrick Taylor, like I said, Fernando Vargas. I don't think Vargas ever makes it. Mikael Kessler, he was a good fighter during his time, but the Carl Froches and of the world were able to defeat him, and he was a good fighter. Same thing with Arthur Abraham.
Yep.
SOG and them took care of those guys pretty well.
Right.
So, and Mikey Garcia. Now, there's a kid you're going to look at, and I guess you're going to always stop and have a pause and look at his career and see if he gets your vote that particular year. But didn't quite make it this year. Joel Casamayor, tremendous Olympic amateur career as well. Do you consider that? How much do you weigh in? Is that a factor? Probably should be. So, a lot of good fighters on this list. And like I said, it's always a privilege to go through it and try to pick your five. And it can be pretty difficult.
Yes, it can. And there's a couple of a guy whose name keeps coming up is Wilfredo Vasquez, and he almost made my list. He unfortunately, he's known a lot for being knocked out by Nassim Hamed in like 1997, but he had a tremendous career prior to that included, he held the 122-pound title from 92 to 95, the WBA 126-pound title from 96 to 98, and included 9 defenses in that first reign, and had some big wins, including he has a win over Orlando Canizales. But he has some losses too, and the win over Canizales was a little older, so it doesn't quite have the impact that it would had it been. And also, speaking of impact, I think the only thing that separates, or the one thing that will always separate Meldrick Taylor in the Hall of Fame, is the win over Chavez. Right? Had he gotten that win, I think most people would have voted for him. But when you don't have it, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. And it's tough because what people don't realize, you only get 5 votes, and there's so many other talented, accomplished fighters on the ballot, that you have to consider. So yeah, it's tough. But so the next step is we all have to get these things in before the end of the month. They tally them up, and the second weekend in June, they will. Well, I guess they'll announce the winners at the end of this year, like in December. And the Boxing Hall of Fame parade and the Hall of Fame weekend is the second week of June in Canastota, New York. Have you been, George?
I've been to about 3 of them, I believe. When Tyson got in, I went with, when some other fighters got in. Haven't been in a while, but it's always a terrific time, no question about it. It's culmination of a lot of people's careers, and they always have media members inducted as well. It's not just fighters;
Right.
it's media members and trainers and referees and things of that nature. So it's quite a gathering of folks. It's always a pretty special weekend, and they do a tremendous job of putting that on. Ed Brophy and his staff there.
Yes, yes, they do. I've never been. Maybe this is the year. We'll see.
Right, right.
All right.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Got it. Good doing
Good talk.
Yeah, good talk.
Okay.
Educational talk. So whoever's out there wants to know who some of these fighters are and how to pronounce Wongtong Cam.
Right.
Show, right?
Right.
All right.
And if you like the show, hit the like, subscribe button and all that, and make sure you're with us next time.
All right. Thanks, George.